Welcome back yet again, this time for Song 5, the last freely available video on the list. All further songs shall be for channel members only, so if you want to see them then do consider clicking the join button. In the meantime, the song of this video is God 1970 by John Lennon. In many ways, John Lennon was the living embodiment of the positive vision of the Boomer Truth regime. The man who was totally detached from the old world thinking of those who came before him, and totally embraced the post-war thinking and ideals of the Boomer generation. Though the greater example of this from John Lennon is Song 6, Imagine, this song still serves as a great example of the Boomers' individualism, atomization, deracination, and radical self-love. If the typical Boomer is a man who has rejected his heritage, then this song must surely serve as one of the clearest examples of that. Let's see what it says. God is a concept by which we measure our pain. I'll say it again, God is a concept by which we measure our pain. As you can see, the song starts with a repudiation of faith. God is no longer the creator, the arbiter of morality, the idol to be worshipped, the father to be respected, or anything like that. Rather, God is a concept, not even a real entity, by which we measure our pain. By this, Lennon intended to reduce God, and faith in general, to a mere coping mechanism. He said to Rolling Stone that pain is the pain we go through all the time. You're born in pain. Pain is what we are most of the time, and I think that the bigger the pain, the more God you look for. In this, there is somewhat of the sense that one is thrown into life in the sense explored by the existentialist Martin Heidegger. Lennon is arguably feeling a bit too sorry for himself here, with the reality being that life isn't a near-endless experience of pain, though it can perhaps be described more accurately as a struggle in the Darwinian sense that we simply have to accept and deal with. In any case, this view is one that I would tend to agree with, though I wouldn't say for 1 minute that concepts of the divine or religious feeling are mere coping mechanisms. Indeed, though I don't have exhaustive studies for this, I would not be surprised to find that the more religious you are, the happier you are with your life, thus the less in need of coping mechanisms you are. The inverse of Lennon's claim here. I'm not sure how religious a boomer like Lennon ever really was, but it seems to me that, behind the poetic nihilism, Lennon was little more than a smug, anti-theistic, depressed pop star, and his aura of profundity was entirely shallow. In any case, the song then goes on to list what Lennon does not believe in. It says, I don't believe in magic, I Ching, Bible, tarot, Hitler, Jesus, Kennedy, Buddha, mantra, Gita, yoga, kings, Elvis, Zimmerman, and lastly, Beatles. Now, I'm sure that everyone reading this list will see a number of things that they too do not believe in or are not familiar with in the first place. Admittedly, I hadn't heard of I Ching, and apparently that's some sort of ancient chink magic to do with divination. Who knows? And I also note the quite wide range of cultures Lennon is drawing from here, though I can't help but feel that it is somewhat performative. In any case, the point here isn't that Lennon does not believe in these things specifically, but instead that he does not believe in anything external to himself. However, if we do look at the type of things he mentions here, they all fall into the broad categories of magic, religion, philosophy, the enlightening of the soul, and lastly, celebrity. I should also say here that Zimmerman is apparently a reference to Bob Dylan, that's his original surname, not the telegram sent to Mexico by the Germans, nor the walking frame for old people. Now, what Lennon is saying in his rejection of all these things is not so much about the things themselves, though I dare say he would have had problems with all of them. But yes, this is not meant to portray the negative vision of Boomer Truth, which is, most simply put, just Nazism, but rather that this song is meant to portray the positive vision, with these all being things that are excluded from that positive vision. Even the Beatles, within which he spent a huge portion of his life and without which he would likely have just been a nobody, do not fit into the positive vision of Boomer Truth, so they too must be rejected. Instead, I just believe in me, Yoko and me, and that's reality. And that is the essence of the song right there. Lennon has searched deep within his shallow midwit soul and found that reality is himself, as well as that sorely overrated woman. This is the same sort of thing as the insufferable idea of my truth versus objective truth, or even truth in terms of what's good for the gander. It's individualism, short of all context and inherited identity, in explicit rejection even of one's own past, but especially one's ancestral and cultural past, all made to look profound and insightful. Really though, it is just the nihilistic worship of the self, and it's no more profound than the fantasies of your run-of-the-mill narcissist. Continuing, the dream is over. What can I say? The dream is over yesterday. Here we see Lennon coming out of a personal metamorphosis. It's important to understand that this song was released in 1970, in the first album after the Beatles split. Much of this song is an attempt by Lennon to cast off the Beatles' image and Beatles mythos. The musical composition of the whole song is stripped down to place focus on the lyrics, as contrasted with the elaborateness of later Beatles tracks. In a way, it's somewhat reminiscent of the English split from Rome, with the churches of England being stripped back and made dull to encourage greater focus on God and the message of the priests. I say all of this to give context to the idea behind the passage here, with the dream that Lennon declares to be over being the dream of the 1960s. The summer of love, the cultural and sexual revolutions, the perpetual teenage mindset, getting high and just living life, man. All of that moved on. It was no longer the political moment. Reality set in, and Lennon viewed himself as needing to get back down to earth. The breakup of the Beatles and the release of this album may be marked as the time when that dream died. This idea is continued with the end of the song, I was the Dreamweaver, but now I'm reborn. I was the Walrus, but now I'm John. And so, dear friends, you'll just have to carry on. The dream is over. Now, with the dreams of the 60s gone, Lennon looked for what was left, and all he found was the nihilistic worship of the self. It wasn't community, it wasn't nation, it wasn't religion, it wasn't civilization, it wasn't family, and it wasn't even my generation any longer. It was, I just believe in me. I hope it doesn't take too much to convince you that this world, the world of unlimited self-expression and self-love, is one that we should all look upon with contempt and disgust. We needn't begin to believe in tarot, Bible, Elvis, or I Ching, but we should have something that unites us, something that drives us on, and something that we aspire towards. For me, that's tradition, Darwinian loyalty, and a life true to the masculine soul. For you, that is not for me to say, but please, for our sakes and your own, believe in more than just yourself, and aspire to something greater than the nihilistic vanity of Lennon's boomer truth.